All right. Hello. We're live right now from Somnium Space once again. Hello, everyone. Good evening for those who are in Europe and for those who are in Somnium. We're coming live to you with another live stream. And this time, this live stream is dedicated to an amazing London tour, which is done by one of our team members, one of our community members, Snakebite, and yeah, he'll tell you more about that. We need to head to the to the museums themselves, and I'll show you where we are going. Actually, I'll show you exactly where we are going and where we're heading. One second, let me teleport here. Let me teleport there. Yeah, we're heading towards the main island, and I'll do this for now. So you'll see my first view. Oh, my hands, beautiful! What a moon! Amazing view here in VR. And yeah, so we'll head here, and we will. I'll check for a second the quality of the. Oh, my shadow! Look at this. Whoa. All right. So I'll check the stream quality if it's streaming live to you guys, if you see me, and if you do. Okay, perfect. So you can hear me. I can hear that you can hear me. That's awesome, right? And we're heading towards those beautiful buildings in the main island. You know, where's this yellow orb? That yellow orb means there's a user or a couple of users. So we're heading. We'll be diving, my friends. We'll be diving through the water. So get ready. And yeah, let's take some air. Don't breathe. So we're heading through the water. Let's make our journey a little bit faster. We'll head to this. It's dark in the water because it's night. When it's day, you'll see in the water. You know, you'll see all the details in the water. You'll also see clouds above the sky. But since it's dark at night, I mean, it's dark in the water. Try to go somewhere in the water at night, and you'll see what kind of vision you'll be having. So we're heading there. We'll soon be in the main island. I'm teleporting to make it faster. But yeah, okay, you can see that we're already coming to the coming here, and we'll need to go up, and we are getting there. Oh yes, so those are 3 pillars of London Museum in Somnium, which were built by one of our community members. And hello. Oh,
hello.
and here he is. I'm streaming live. 1 second. Let me turn on. Oh, that's me. Hello. Let me turn on live streaming. Bam. And now you'll see me like this. So come here, Snake. Come to me. Let's stand in front of the.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, let's stand in front of the building. So perhaps you can tell us a few words about those museums and what inspired you to build them. That would be awesome to hear.
Wow. Well, it goes back a long way. Obviously, in the real world, I used to be a coach tour driver. So I've travelled all over Europe, UK, Ireland, Germany, France, you name it. I've probably been there with the coach. And I love giving over history for people. I used to see in my mirror lots of the faces of all the old ladies and things sitting in my coach.
Right.
They're also, so I love doing that. And so I've built some museums here so that, again, I can do what I love, passing on history to people.
Okay, so
giving tours.
Stream people. Okay, I'll try my best to do those things, all right? Yeah, woo! Okay, I'll do my best. But meanwhile, you stream people, you should also, whoever is watching our stream, please I want to hear some applause. All right, Snake will watch all the streams and see what you comment. Okay, he'll do it.
Okay.
So yeah, so let
Yep.
me quickly check. So you if you can make your microphone a little bit up, that would be perfect and
A
amazing. If
little
not,
bit up.
no
Right. Well,
problem. In meanwhile,
let me.
I'm trying to see whether the stream. Wait, give me this. All right, we'll do this. Let me go to stabilization settings. Okay, we'll do this. And all right, so I'm checking one more time for the stream quality and stream stuff. You know,
Uh huh.
just so that we are not. Okay, that runs perfectly fine. Uh,
Sweet.
that runs really nice. So yeah, we can. I think we might. What time is it now? Right, 34. So I think we can kick it off. I see
Yep.
some people might be coming, but if they do, they'll know where to find us. And
Yep.
yeah, which building are we starting? The middle, the left, the right? Which one?
The one to your right, my left, furthest
Okay, cool. So we're going there. All right, you lead the
left.
way, and we patiently listen.
Dun, dun,
All
dun,
right,
dun.
so we're going into this building. So let's go inside and see what Snake has prepared for us today. So, oh wow, look at this. Whoa, that's something. It's like a real museum. Snake, where are you? Oh, here you are. Here you are. We're coming with our stream to you. And this is the first. Okay, let me set up the camera so that people see. Let me go closer and people see the image. Beautiful. Oh, wow, that's all right. So the floor is yours.
Okay, well, welcome, guys. All you people that are streaming, I've got one question for you. Why aren't you in Somnium?
I don't
It's
get it. I don't
I
get
don't
it.
know what.
I
I
don't
don't
get it.
know either. But
But the
London,
best ones
well,
are.
oh,
So the
the best
smartest
ones.
aren't.
Yes, got to have some good crowd here. London itself. Well, let's just say the modern London. Simple fact for you: there's over 300 different languages spoken in London today. So a phenomenal mixing pot of different cultures and different people. But of course, London has masses and masses of its own history. And this ship behind me is just one of them. If you travel further downstream of the Thames towards the eastern side of London, you will come to a plot called Greenwich. And at Greenwich, there is a huge ship there which is in dry dock. It's an old tea clipper called the Cutty Sark. Now, the Cutty Sark gets its name from a Robbie Burns poem. Directly behind you there, Arthur, is the figurehead of the Cutty
All
Sark.
right. Let me show it to you.
I'll let you turn the camera around.
All
Yeah.
right.
And
Awesome.
that is a lady who featured in a Robbie Burns poem dressed in just this sort of night dress.
Got it.
And he actually comments in the poem, "We lassie, what a cutty sark." And it's actually referring to that nightgown. But the vessel was given that name, the Cutty Sark, and she was a tea clipper. For those of you that don't know what a tea clipper is, basically, way back in the 1800s, this vessel would go round to China
Mm-hmm.
and collect 8,000 tea chests of tea,
Oh, wow.
sometimes just loose tea, which is equivalent, if you know how big a big London bus is, 47 London buses in its hold worth of tea. So a phenomenal vessel. Her central mast is 152 feet high. But why were they called tea clippers? Well, most ships and vessels which are a very large draft, which is the clearance of the hull of the water, plough through the waves. They slam into the waves.
All
So
right.
they don't get very fast. But a tea clipper, this particular vessel had 32 sails, making 32,000 square feet of sails, and lifted the boat literally up in the water, even with all that weight underneath her. So she clipped the top of the waves, hence the term tea clipper.
All right.
And so she made some very, very good grounds. She did work with Australia, bringing wool back to England, but her main job was, of course, transporting tea from China and bringing it back to
I
London.
love tea, by the
And
way.
this is, sorry?
I love tea.
We love tea, yeah. So this vessel was Arthur's tea vessel. So
Oh, I wish, my friends,
and
but
yes,
that's not.
recently she celebrated her 150th year in
Oh,
dry dock,
nice.
and she was a training vessel for the Navy. So she's seen a lot of history, but you can go and visit her down at Greenwich. Let's go upstairs.
Or upstairs. All right, we're going upstairs,
Yeah.
my friends. My friends, we're going upstairs. Love those tours. I've been for a couple of tours, and what I love about Snake's tours in his museums is that um, like there's every time new images, new stories, and something new to learn, and it's just amazing. Oh, we've got a lot of stuff happening here. So look at this. One second, I just want to
Yep.
show the
Pan
people
around.
like exactly like can you imagine we're in a VR museum here inside the virtual world. Outside the window there is this, the whole world waiting to be explored and never-ending possibilities. But let's go back to the tour.
Okay. Well, basically, you're looking at one of many panels there, as you saw, Arthur. And from this end of the wall to the other end of the wall,
Mm-hmm.
I could do an hour and a half's tour easy,
Oh wow!
because of all the history regarding all the various things. So I'm going to skim over some and give these lovely people just a general overview of some of the London
All
history.
right, let's do
So
that.
the top left-hand side here, some people may realise they've seen that building here. That's actually the MI6 building in London. It's on the south bank of the Thames.
Mm-hmm.
And as you have lots of people here who were James Bond followers, you would have seen that in a couple of films with him walking out of that building
Right, yeah.
along that south embankment. And unfortunately, in the real world, we had an attack in the early 2000s by the IRA, and they fired a rocket shoulder fired grenade across some buildings on the other side of this building here, and it hit a window. Thankfully, they're bomb proof, and all they succeeded in doing was cracking a pane of glass. But that building was one of the targets for the IRA.
Interesting.
The
And who was
building to the
attacking
top,
them? Do you know
sorry?
who was attacking them? A terrorist or what happened?
Well, the IRA basically are letters basically standing for the Irish Republican Army.
Ah, IRA.
And
Okay.
these were people that were
Right.
basically
Right.
not
Now I got it.
wanting the British Army in Ireland. So
Right.
they used this building as a target. Top centre, we have the fabulous Tate Gallery. Now, we in Britain, we have a sugar company called Tate and Lyle. And this is the Tate that gives the name to the gallery of the Tate Gallery. And it's a gentleman by the name of Sir Henry Tate. And he had his own collection of art. He had his own private collection. He had over 200 oil paintings and over 1,000 watercolours. And he didn't just to be lost or thrown away when he passed away.
Mm-hmm.
So he approached the National Gallery in London and said, if you'd like to take all this off my hands when I die, I'll be very happy. I'll bequeath it to you in my will.
All right.
And they said, we'd love to, but we've got nowhere to put it. So he said, well, tell you what, give me somewhere to develop and I will build you a gallery. So they gave him the old Millbank prison. And even today, if you go up these steps towards the Tate Gallery, you will find some of the robbed stone from the old prison forming part of these steps or this entranceway from that Millbank prison. And he converted and leveled the land and built this huge great gallery here called the Tate Gallery. And in 1950 they had a big tidy up and they've split it so that the ground floor is full of English painters and the upper floor are European painters like Monet. And
Nice. It
things
looks like a
that.
small building. Is it
Van Dyck.
huge or is it small one?
It actually goes back a long way. Yes. It's
Oh, all right.
yeah,
Okay.
And there's a couple
Cool.
of leased floors in there as well.
Awesome.
So Henry Tate is the one of the two people from the sugar company, or he was a sugar magnate
Right.
from Tate and Lyle, and that's the name that is given to
Oh,
that
we have a
gallery.
guest. Wait, we have another guest.
We
Hello,
have another guest coming
you're on the
in.
live stream. Hello.
The
Hello, This
Sith
What's
Lord.
up,
Lord.
everybody?
Hello, what's
I
up?
can't believe I found you.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
was
the
just
biggest
wandering
buildings
around
in the
looking for
whole
the giant
world.
triangles.
You couldn't miss
Yo.
us if you tried.
Welcome to the tour. So Snake is telling us about that section of the tour buildings. So yeah, just come over. You are on the live camera. The viewers are there. The interesting part is here. I mean, we love viewers, of course. And yeah, let's continue, guys. Wait, let me.
Okay, just to skim down to the bottom right-hand side here, this is, of course, the Houses of Parliament and the Big Ben. Now, a lot of people assume Big Ben is the clock tower, but that's incorrect. Big Ben is, in fact, the bell within the clock tower. And the original bell was over 16 metric tons and was brought from Liverpool by steamship down to London, where it was then put onto a horse-drawn carriage, a big trailer by 16 white horses, and brought to the clock tower ready to be installed. But unfortunately, it developed a crack and had to be scrapped.
Oops. Okay.
So they made another bell by the Whitechapel Foundry in London of 13.76 metric tons, and it took over 2 hours to cool down. But eventually they brought the bell here, and along with the 3 quarter bells, so that every quarter of an hour, one bell is rung, and those are 3 separate bells, and then you have the big bell, Big Ben, which strikes on the hour. And those 3 and Big Ben were winched by hand over 200 feet up into the clock tower itself.
Wow.
To keep the workers happy, they had ladies turning up with sandwiches, and they even had a brass band to keep the men entertained whilst they were winching these things up into the clock tower.
Nice.
But eventually it was done. First rang out around 1858. And publicly in 1923, it actually went out on the BBC World Service Radio, and since then has become synonymous with London, of course. Now, why was it called Big Ben? Well, there's a couple of possible little stories. One of them was a gentleman by the name of Benjamin Court, who was a pugilist or a boxer of the time, and he was a very large chap, so they said he could have had that nickname of Big Ben. But my point goes to the Chancellor of Works. He was a gentleman who's in charge of all the jobs in London, and he was organised with getting this bell for this new clock tower. And he was a very large, stout chap and was known by his work colleagues as Big Ben.
All right.
Because his name is Benjamin Hall. And his name is also inscribed in the rim of the bell. So for me, that gives me the point to say that it's his name or his nickname, which gives us the name for the bell. But it actually weighs, as I say, 13.76 metric tons. It's phenomenal. It's about 9 feet high and about 7 feet 2 across. So it's a big, big bell. And up until St Paul's Cathedral's bell was cast, that was the biggest bell in Britain. But if you go to St Paul's Cathedral, you can actually go and see the huge bell, which is 18 metric tons and is known simply as Great Paul. And that is now the biggest bell in Britain. Let's move down to another board.
All right, let me take the camera. And we set up the board. Oh, beautiful. Let me put it just a little further. All right. Yeah.
Okay. So top left, of course, Abraham Lincoln. Why would we have an American president in our political centre? He is actually on the south side, well, he's on the north bank, but he's on the south side, if you like, of Parliament Square, outside the Houses of Parliament, and he stands there proudly by his chair of office, and an American president. So I often used to ask that when I was taking people around in my coach, and I used to say to them, why have we got an American president there? Well,
yeah, I think many people are asking the same question today.
Yeah, well, the whole thing is basically his grandfather was English.
Oh,
he was an
cool.
emigrating person from Leicestershire in England. he went out there and had a son there called Thomas Lincoln.
Mm-hmm.
Thomas married an American girl, and they had Abraham Lincoln, who went on to be an American president. So, thanks to his lineage, we honour him by having his statue at the front of the Houses of Parliament. The
Amazing.
top centre there is Queen Boudicca. Now, this is a very turbulent time, back when London was known as Londinium, under Roman rule. And Queen Boudicca, she was the queen of the Iceni tribe, who were a tribal group of Celts who were out over East Anglia way. So if any of you people know of the British Islands shape, there's near the lower right hand side, there's a sort of a big bubble of land, a big round piece of land to the right. She was on the upper edge of that. And that was the lands of the Iceni. And Rome didn't want to deal with a lady. They were very patriarchal, in other words, men only.
Yep.
So when she ascended the throne, because her husband passed away, who was the king, then the Romans took a bit of a dim view of her, attacked her in her village, stripped her bare to the waist, and whipped her back in front of all her tribal people. Her daughters were attacked by the Roman soldiers. I'll leave you to put 2 and 2 together for that, what happened to the girls. And she, needless to say, was the woman scorned. She was very upset. She raised her banner, and thousands of men flocked to her side, and she rose in rebellion against the Roman forces. She utterly burned Colchester to the ground, and even today, if you go into Colchester, there's a little pub there that you can walk through, go out the back door, go down, go back underneath the floor, and come back as if you're going to walk back towards the road outside. And instead, you'll find a perspex sheet, almost clear glass, but it's a plastic. And you can see the layers of the road, how it's been made. And if you look down in what they call stratum, which is basically a layer of stone or colouring or whatever down, which is horizontal, you will see a complete black line. And that is the point of history where Boudicca burnt Colchester to the ground in rebellion against the Romans. So she was a very, very ticked off lady. And after she wiped out Colchester, she turned on London.
Whoop.
London wasn't going to withhold 60,000 men against a mere 138 Romans. So consequently, 3/4 of London was burnt to the ground by her as well. She then turned on St Albans, heading out what we now call the A1, back then was known as the Fosse Way, and she went to St Albans and again burnt it to the ground. And then she made the only
What a lady.
mistake really of her time. Yeah, I mean, very, very ticked off.
A bit, we can say, yeah, we can say that. Sounds like.
But she basically made her only mistake of her campaign, which was then to march towards Wales, and she met the main Roman force coming back the other way,
Oops.
who had heard about all her exploits, and rather than...
That's what happens when you don't have satellite images and GPS, all right? My friends, for whoever you're watching, you know, if you plan something like this, GPS is important.
Because she basically gave them time to set up into a typical Roman formation,
Yep.
a sawtooth design, that her men surged forward and got pinned in the sort of V shape of the front of their forces, and consequently the end figure was something like 60,000 Boudicca troops dead to only 484 Romans.
Oh, wow.
So it was very, very one-sided.
Yeah.
We have another visitor here, Wilson.
Oh, hello. Hello. Wait,
Hello.
let's show your... come closer to the sit. He will be in the stream. Hello. All right.
Hello.
Yeah, we're having a tour here, an amazing tour, I must say. So yeah, come
Okay.
closer there, and we'll let me do one trick here. 1 second. Let me quickly change the FOV, and boom, done. All right. Cool.
Super. Okie dokies. So, bottom lower left, we have, of course, a very famous road in UK,
Downing Street.
Now, that was in fact a gambling den pretty
Ooh.
appropriate considering we have the finance
True.
there. But yes, it was a den of iniquity. It was basically where gentlemen would go and gamble on fighting black cockerels. And these fighting black cockerels would literally fight to the death. They're very territorial animals, and they would basically bet on which cockerel survived the battle. So much so was this gambling done in London that they also had another little road called Cockspur Street. And this is where companies made tiny little spurs that would be fitted to the birds' legs so that when they jumped up and clawed each other, they would do even more damage with these little spurs to each other. So that was Cockspur Street. Not good, yeah. So it takes its name from a gentleman who bought an awful lot of properties down there. Some people say 15, some 20, but either way, he bought a lot of properties down there to stop this gambling going on, and consequently, they named the road after him, and his name is George Downing, and so we now have Downing Street. The lower centre is the cenotaph, which is our symbol of remembrance for our Poppy Day celebrations on the 11th of November, or the closest Sunday to it. And the cenotaph itself simply means empty tomb, but was in fact just in clay and batten, but became so recognised by the British people that they said, we want that as a permanent fixture. So built to a design by Sir Edward Lutyens, they unveiled this in 1919 by King George V, and it was made in Portland stone and remains a very permanent fixture in Whitehall. But it also doesn't bear any names, and that is simply because we've said that when we built this, that it should mean what each of us want it to mean for our own remembrance, whether it be an uncle, a brother, a son, a father, or just a symbol of remembrance for all the dead from all world wars. So that's the cenotaph. We'll move down a little bit.
All right. We're moving, gentlemen and ladies. Right. This one?
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Let me
With
set up the
hussars
let me
and
set up
lions.
the camera. Beautiful. Let me come closer a little bit. Let's do it like this. More closer, and we are ready.
Okie dokie. Well, obviously, very famous gentleman standing top left, of course, Nelson's Column. Nelson's Column, of course, was erected 1840 to 1843. And a lot of people, if you look top right, you've got what we call Landseer's lions there by Edward Landseer. And a lot of people think they were made at the same time as Nelson's Column, but of course they weren't. They were a later addition, around 1867. But Nelson's Column, of course, commemorates the big battle of Trafalgar, where he beat the fleets of the French. I think there was something like 27 English vessels to a French 33 force of vessels. And Nelson decided he won't go side by side as usually the way, and they would then just shoot across to each other. He would actually break the line head on. So he broke his line into two other lines and literally smashed straight through the side of the French line, breaking them into three sections, where he promptly pummeled them and captured an awful lot of their fleet. And the day was won for Nelson. Unfortunately, it cost him his life. The very famous line there of "Kiss me, Hardy" is associated with the Battle of Trafalgar, where Nelson was dying on the poop deck, and Hardy is said to have kissed him on his forehead. But he was then replaced into some form of preservation. Now, we believe it was in a barrel of rum, so he could then have his body preserved, almost in a pickled sense of alcohol, and brought back to Britain to be given a proper hero's burial. And of course, if it took a good couple of months, he wouldn't have been smelling very nicely. So they kept him in the barrel of rum and returned him. He was taken off the ship, the King's ship, just outside the Isle of Wight, and transferred to a royal barge and then brought into Portsmouth. His body was cleaned, presented in his best dress uniform, and then he laid in state until about the 7th of January 1806. And people could then pay their respects. But there's a rumour, apparently, when his body was removed from the barrel of rum, that the sailing master turned to the sailors and said, "Would anyone like to take a drink of the rum?" Now that obviously had Nelson's body in it for a good couple of months. But this is where we believe the term that sailors use for rum being Nelson's blood, and that's where it possibly originates from. So Nelson's blood and the rum that had held his body.
Cool.
Now Landseer's Lions, top right-hand side there, as I said, was a later addition to Nelson's column around 1867. And if you ever get up close to them, like these tourists here, you
Okay.
can actually see lots of diddy little holes in their feet. I'm not sure if you'll get it in the resolution of the picture, but if you're actually there in London, you can see them quite clearly when you're standing by them. And a lot of people think that's just from air bubbles being released in the casting as it cools, because these are hollow cast lions, beautifully detailed. But it's not that at all. The lions amazingly survived the Second World War, and the tiny little holes that you see in the body and around the paws are in fact shrapnel holes from bombs exploding around London and pieces of shrapnel flying through the air and puncturing through into the casts.
Yeah.
So if we could lift those up, you'd probably see a pile of World War II bomb fragments sitting on the plinth on which they now sit. So a lot of history in parts of London. Let's come down.
Yeah, let me take the camera. Come here, camera. All right, we're coming here. Let me set it up like this. Yeah, beautiful.
Okie dokie. So here we have various images. This is the National Gallery, just over the back of the Trafalgar Square. These are the people that Sir Henry Tate spoke to and said, "Would you like all my art?" Now we have top centre, we have St Martin's in the Fields, otherwise known as the Paupers Church. So why is it called the Paupers Church? Well, it's done a lot of very, very big charitable events. Every year the BBC Christmas service is usually transmitted from St Martin's in the Fields Church. And why is it called St Martin's in the Fields? Because it's in the middle of London. Well, at the time of Henry VIII, this church was surrounded by fields. So it shows you how much London has expanded from Henry VIII's time. But this church literally got its name because it was just a church in the middle of a large area of land. So St Martin's in the Fields. But at Christmas time, it also opens its crypt up to people from the street. So people who sleep rough, who are very much down on their luck, they are invited to come in and they open the crypt up. There's an undercroft, if you like, under the church, and they have a huge Christmas dinner there, all on the church. They have at least one decent Christmas dinner for the people that are on the street there.
Nice.
Now the top right there is two images really in one. The first one is the big hotel at the back there. This is Charing Cross Station Hotel. It's built right over the old station itself. And there's a tall sort of spire there in the front of it, in the foreground of the actual entrance and exit. There's a little car park there to pick up and drop off people. And that is Queen Eleanor's Cross, literally why it's called Charing Cross. And Edward I, of course, his wife was Queen Eleanor. And when she passed away, every time her funeral cortege stopped, bringing her from Kent back to London, where they stopped overnight, they built a cross. And although this cross isn't in its own true location, that was further back over another part of London, but it was moved over here as a symbol for her in front of the hotel and the station. And also, if you're in Britain and you go past a sign that says, say, London 80 miles, that's the point it's measured to. Inside that car park, just out of shot to the right, there's a brass plaque on the wall, and that wall actually states that all distances to London are measured to this point. And so basically, any signage that says however many miles to London, that's where it's measured to. Now, another big famous location here is, of course, the lower centre. This is Covent Garden. And up until 1974, this was an Italianate sort of area of trade, market, fruit sellers, flower sellers. Some of you may know a lovely old film called My Fair Lady with Audrey Hepburn, Rex Harrison, and this was all portrayed about this market area where they used to buy and sell various bits and bobs to do with fruit and flowers. Nowadays, it's really just a tourist hive, and you have entertainers there, you have operatic people singing arias for the public, but still a big feature of London. And the history, of course, goes back into the King Charles's time, the 1600s, 1622, so he was very into his Italianate style of buildings, and so he paid to have this square created in an Italian style. The lower right hand side is our second highest court in the land of UK, and this is the Royal Courts of Justice. And I always ask, if you are a tourist and you come into London, go visit the court. That doesn't mean you will get into trouble. What it basically is,
there's two ways how to visit that, right?
Exactly, there's two, definitely. But when that was actually being built, there's some 18 courts inside this building. But the the Irish navvies that actually built that, they stayed on site overnight. And when during the night time they got bored, they started to use their skills as stonemasons and things and carvers, and they designed one of the columns, and it's still there today. They got told off and told not to carry on, but
Nice.
they'd already got about halfway up the column. But if you today go in through that front door and walk down through the long corridors that lead off to the various courts, you will go down a long pile of columns. If you go to the furthest one on the right, literally about half the height of the column, there are some amazing pictures which have been all just hand whittled by these Irish navvies whilst they were on duty at the Royal Courts of Justice and helping to build that and make it the second highest court in the land of the UK. Next panel.
Next panel. All right. Let me put the camera here. Okay, oh, some nice pictures. Yay.
Okay.
All right.
Right, guys, top left-hand side. This is Fleet Street. Now, you would have probably heard of lots of things like the plague and things like that that went through London and the Great Fire of London. Well, Fleet Street, unfortunately, was a cause of an awful lot of it. There is a river running under this road through man-made tunnels. It used to be completely open, and for that reason, it caused an awful lot of infection.
Right.
Cholera, typhoid, dysentery, not nice at all. And eventually, when the Thames itself was smelling so badly on a hot day, Parliament decided, that's it, we've got to start to put something either over Fleet Street, or we've got to create some sewers. And so, of course, during Queen Victoria's reign, the sewer system was established in London. Fleet Street, well, the river was reorganised down man-made tunnels. They then covered that in earth, brought the ground up, and then put down a trackway, later become the actual tarmac area. But so Fleet Street now, as I say, takes its name from the river that runs somewhere hiding underneath the road. But here in the centre, between these buses, you can see a bird-like creature on top of a pillar. And this column has above it a griffin. And this griffin marks the inner mile of London. So here, where the picture was taken, is in Greater London or Outer Edge. And then if you go past that pillar and the griffins, you will go into Inner London or the Inner Financial Centre. They usually call it the Great Mile. but it is in fact about 0.9 of a mile across. But that's the Griffin, and even the Queen, when she's on one of her parades, she walks to that point and she has to stop. And there, her assistant, Black Rod, is a gentleman, carries a long black cane, ebony. He has to tap the column, and the Bank of England representative steps forward, and he has to officially ask permission for the Queen to enter the financial hub of London, and then she can continue on in her parade past the Griffin. But if you go down to the North Embankment and the other side, about a mile the other side of the centre of London, and you'll see Griffins over there. They are literally all round that sort of mile square centre part of London. Now, of course, say one of the other big famous symbols, top right hand side, is of course London Bridge, and London Bridge itself is a creation by Sir Horace Jones, and there's another big name associated with it. This is Tower Bridge. I did say London Bridge, didn't I? Slap my legs. It's Tower Bridge. And Horace Jones's understudy, the gentleman that worked with him on its creation, became a huge name in his own right. And that gentleman was the name of Isambard Kingdom Brunel. And he was the understudy, and he actually helped finish it off, because Horace Jones passed away before the completion of Tower Bridge. The central arch is able to be lifted up for high-masted vessels, especially when we have galleon days and they have all these beautiful high-masted ships coming in and out of London for a special event, and they are counterweighted by a 1,000-ton basicule, or a counterweight. There's 1,000 ton each side, and when it was run manually, it never failed. Then it went on to steam, it never failed. And currently, of course, it's run on electrics, and it's never failed. So this bridge has been up for a long, long time, and the bridge mechanism has never failed, from manual right the way through to modern electric.
Nice.
When the first part of the towers were finished on one side of the bridge, Horace Jones has said, "What have I created? It looks like a steel skeleton clothed in stone." He wasn't actually impressed with his own design, but that is one of his comments. Now, the walkway between the two towers is still open. You can go up the towers, walk through the walkway, and get some stunning views of London. They've covered them all in because, unfortunately, very sadly, we ended up with an awful lot of suicides jumping off of the open walkway and landing down into the Thames. And hitting the Thames from that height would be like hitting concrete. So unfortunately, we had a lot of people pass away recklessly throwing their lives away. But now they've enclosed it all in, so that can't happen. But at least you can still have access to that walkway and see some beautiful views of London. I know we're running tight on time, so we'll pop to this board here.
Yeah, I was just wondering, you know, since we have just released the ability to put 360 videos and pictures inside Somnium, right? So you could replace some of these images with the real 360 videos and pictures, and actually, while in the tour, people can go inside those bubbles, and actually, you know, be inside the London and be inside those places, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
By the way, I just wanted to ask, I heard some sounds like you're hitting something. We're making it like, are you hitting something in real life in VR headset, or you're?
I'm actually was wiggling my arm around to point at things, and I caught my microphone.
Because it sounded exactly like you were hitting with your wooden thing here. Exactly, it was synced 100%. I was like wondering, really? Cool. Nice avatar, by the way.
Thank you. It's my mage. Okay, so we have a very famous funeral area here in Lambeth Palace. Now, Lambeth Palace, for those of you that don't know, is the London seat for the Archbishop of Canterbury. And in the grounds of the palace, there is this tomb. And this tomb has upon the top of it a simulation of a bread plant. Now, why is that? Well, some of you might have already guessed it. This is the funeral tomb of Captain William Bligh. Now, you may again have heard of a film called Mutiny on the Bounty. This is the gentleman who was the captain, who was put off with some of his officers for basically the men didn't want him on the vessel anymore, and they mutinied against him. And his job was to actually go to Tahiti and collect a load of bread plants and bring them back to London. He certainly spent a long time there because the bread plants weren't ready. And his men got involved with these beautiful native women, and lots of relationships were set up. And of course, when it came that they had to leave, a lot of the men were grumbling. Needless to say, they didn't want to leave these wonderful ladies and this beautiful idyllic lifestyle. But eventually he forced them all aboard, and they set off. Not for very long. The men did mutiny, put him into a longboat along with about 12 other loyal officers and a few men, and they then returned to Tahiti to collect their women. And meantime, well, William Bligh wasn't about to be beaten. He actually navigated a longboat, an open-top longboat. Some phenomenal journey. He got back across towards Africa. He skirted around Africa. He went all the way up towards Spain, putting in every now and again just to freshen up the water supply they had. And then from Spain, he left his men finding their own way back to Britain, and he travelled overland via coach, got into France, through France, back to Britain. He actually navigated this open boat, some phenomenal miles, something like 600 nautical miles. It's a crazy distance. And he got back to Britain. Well, he got told off by the Admiralty. Said, well, if you weren't such a stickler for rules and regs, your men wouldn't have mutinied. But he wasn't having that, and he actually raised funds for 2 more galleons to go down to Tahiti and round up the deserters, so that he wanted them hung. He only found a few, and by the time they found the rest on Pitcairn Island, there was only 5 girls, 1 guy, and a few children left. So the Pitcairn Island, where the mutineers ended up going with their women, wasn't very favourable at all. The upper right-hand side is County Hall. That's a beautiful location, a lovely old council building, but houses in London the huge Sea Life Centre on the South Bank. And there's 2 massive tanks there, one dedicated to the Pacific of over 1 million litres of water, and one dedicated to the Atlantic, which is 750,000 litres of water. And it's beautiful. You need to go in there and have a look. And they often have unique builds in there, just like Somnium Space. But here they have things like a Volvo car, a huge estate car, and they've sealed the inside, and it's made into a fish tank. And there's fish swimming in and out of the headrests and things like that. So fabulous idea, but what a beautiful place to go and visit. Bottom left, of course, here is London Eye. Move out the way so the camera can see it. This is London Eye. This is our Millennium feature, although it didn't quite get put up completely at the Millennium. And is an amalgamation. French pods, for instance. You've got German gearing, things like this. So each pod weighs just over 9 tons. So they're not light. The wheel keeps going. It doesn't stop. About 0.4 miles an hour. One circuit or ride, or to be absolutely accurate, because it's sponsored by British Airways, they call it a flight on the Eye. You get even a boarding pass when you go on there as well, just like you would do in a plane.
Nice.
But that takes roughly 35 minutes. It's about 405 feet high and will actually allow you to see 6 different counties on a clear day. But it gives you some stunning views of London. Now, of course, any place around London that, if I was going to say to you, epitomises London, has to be the Pearly Kings and Queens. Now, London is, of course, massive history. Tons and tons of it, from back in the days of the Celts to pre-Stone Age people, where London was just known as the place by the wide river before it was even given its name. But the pearly kings and queens basically take their livelihood from being marketeers. They were known as costermongers. Coster meaning apple, monger meaning seller, so they were apple sellers or fruit traders. And again, we have a song in London called Doing the Lambeth Walk, and that comes from these guys as well. They like to copy the gentry who used to go out on a Sunday in all their finery and all their best jewellery and walk around in Hyde Park with their ladies and really show off how well off they are. Well, the costermongers followed the lead of a gentleman called Henry, who was down on the banks of the River Thames and came across a massive bag of pearl buttons. I believe fallen off a boat. Makes a change from falling off a lorry, doesn't it, nowadays? So this had fallen off a boat. And he used these pearl buttons to cover the holes in his jacket and his cap and his trousers. And he was, in fact, a road sweeper and a rat catcher of London. And I think his name's Henry Walton, if my memory serves me right. So he became quite an amazement figurehead that people used to say to him, wow, look, there's Henry in all his refinery with all these pearl buttons all over his outfit, these fancy patterns, and across his back he had logos like Remember the Poor and things like that. And he used to walk with the costermongers when they went around doing their Lambeth Walk and raising money for charity. And he became a real image of London. So much so that other areas of London started to get their own pearly kings and queens, the gents and the ladies, and they again followed his lead by collecting pearl buttons. And look at these fabulous designs that they came up with all over jackets, skirts, trousers, hats, and even the kids are starting to get in on it as well. So each area of London would have their own pearly king and queen, Southwark, Acton, things like that. So anywhere would have their own representative, and on certain days they all get together and have huge pearly kings and queen parade. So that gives you a little bit of a tour of London. Hopefully you've enjoyed that.
Absolutely. Amazing. And that's just I wanna point out, first of all, applause, round of applause. Whoop whoop. Thank you. Woo. And I think I would say it was amazing, and like every time I come here on the tour, because that tour is every week here in Somnium inside those museums. And look, we just covered within an hour, we just covered one half of one floor. There's 3 buildings with many floors. So you can imagine when you get a full tour, you'll be entertained. I'll tell you that.
Good couple of hours.
Exactly. And I mean, again, amazing. Thanks a lot. What I want to do before I cut the stream for our viewers, I want to show them the upper deck because it's a beautiful place with a beautiful view. Can we just quickly go there for a short walk? So we're going there. Let's go up and I'll show you something. I'll show you some really interesting stuff. Oh, you're quick. Your avatar looks old, but you're quick. So I want to show you. Look at this deck. Look at this view. Hey, you got some nice parcels, by the way, Snake. I must say, okay. This is a really good place. But you know, while you were talking about London, beautiful, of course, city. I was thinking, I was looking around. If you look around us, here in VR, right, in this world, actually, own history is being developed, right? Because we've lived, as an early, you are an early member, and we've lived through Somnium taking a different shape, right? All the builds. So first there were some builds, then they changed into some other builds, and there's a lot of places where we already know. Like you say, okay, you turn the right next to the big Ready Player One disco club, and then you go there. There's there's another gallery, and this whole thing is developing, and maybe one day there will be a history tour of Somnium creations which were here in the past, and we were saying, in 2020, there was a building which was built by this and that person, and it was one of the first, disco clubs in Somnium. So, I mean, it made me think, how whole world would develop, as a parallel to the real world. And yeah, so guys, let's make a selfie. Come here. Let's let you stay there. All of you come here, guys. Let's make a selfie before we leave, because it's a beautiful view, beautiful city. Let's remember. So I'm making 5 seconds delay, and let's stop here. 2, 1. All right. So selfie taken. We thank everyone for watching, and whoever was watching live, of course, you're the best. Whoever will be watching later as a recording, you're a little bit worse than the best, but still good, okay? So thanks a lot for coming. It was fun. Come to us. We have a daily meetup in Somnium, which is coming in 2 hours. Is it in 2 hours? Yes, in 2 hours, roundaboutish. And we have weekly history tours. We have weekly discos. We have Explorers Club. I mean, you can imagine. So yeah, come to us. Thanks a lot. And until the next time, bye-bye.
Bye bye. See you later.